you might think, how does diet have an effect on biomechanics? And obviously, the really obvious one is if you're very overweight. So if you're overweight, diet's going to have a big effect on your biomechanics. It's going to affect the way you move. It may affect your posture. For example, if you've got a big belly, then your belly's obviously going to pull your hips forward and encourage that kind of problem, which is already present with people with tight hip flexors, for example, which is most of us who spend too much time sitting. But that big belly is going to kind of accentuate that drift of your hips forward, and maybe also a bit of an anterior tilt of your pelvis. That's kind of the obvious stuff. Obviously, if you're fat, you're not going to move so well. It's not rocket science. Perhaps what's an aspect, a very important aspect of diet, is inflammation. And so inflammation, either by eating too much in one go, something that many of you will have had a problem with over Christmas, or with what you've eaten as well. Maybe another problem with Christmas too. So if you eat too much in one go, you can cause inflammation and bloating of the stomach. Everyone knows this, but also if you eat the wrong kinds of food, this can also cause bloating of the stomach. So just for me personally, if I touch pasta, for example, or I eat too many grains in general, it can be pretty much anything. It could be oats or rice as well. Oats seem to be all right for me in moderation, but if I have too much, then it starts bloating me as well. I'll get this bloating feeling of my stomach, and the problem with this is that it makes it very difficult to retract the abdomen and create intra-abdominal pressure, and you need that intra-abdominal pressure to be able to activate your TVA, your transverse abdominis, properly, and without that you really can't support your lower limbs, or indeed your lower limbs in your gait, or indeed your upper body very much in rotation or any movements you're going to do in the upper body. So it's really important to be able to retract the abdomen. So what am I talking about here? So I've done some explainers on posture before. I'll just do a quick recap. So when you're standing with good posture, there are a couple of elements to it. So element number one is going to be shoulders up, then it's going to be shoulders back, then it's going to take a deep breath, so raising the rib cage. Then you need to try and give yourself a neutral spine. So your neutral spine usually entails people posteriorly tilting their pelvis when they're standing, and then retracting the abdomen here. So you can see if I pull my shirt here, that my abdomen is well retracted beyond my rib cage here, and that's basically good postural position from side on. Now, if you're bloated, this becomes very difficult to retract here. So obviously, if you eat too much, or again, you eat the wrong kinds of foods for you personally, then you're not going to be able to retract the abdomen very easily. It's going to become even more difficult when you actually start moving. So just in standing there, trying to put myself in a good postural position standing, perhaps I could still do that fairly well with a little bit of some minor bloating in my stomach. But if I started trying to maintain this good postural position while I'm moving and try and retain that intra-abdominal pressure as I'm moving and keep that abdomen retracted, it's going to get really difficult. And the more resistance, the more intensity I put on the movement, the harder it's going to be. And to be honest, the biggest limiting factor to my workouts these days when I do things like that is what I've eaten. So it's not usually a problem in the morning with me, but if I have something for lunch that's not quite right, sometimes I can, even 2 or 3 hours afterwards, I might go to the gym and I just get this slight uncomfortable feeling of bloating. It was a much bigger problem for me in the past before I kind of figured out what was causing that. But that has a limitation on my ability to work out properly, because every movement I'm making, I'm trying to keep this abdomen retracted and try and keep this pressure so I can activate my TVA and move properly. But with the bloating, that makes it very difficult. And to be honest, it's probably the biggest restriction on my workouts. That's the biggest problem I have in my workouts. So very rarely am I tired these days. Do I go to the gym and I just feel, I can't bother to do it today? Generally, I'm pretty fresh every time I go to the gym. I kind of make sure it's that way as well. I don't try not to train tired, because if you train tired as well, it's also very difficult to hold these positions if you're tired. So it has a big impact on biomechanics diet, and I'm going to talk about some of the problems with diet and perhaps what I consider a good diet for the rest of this video.